Hello and welcome to your weekly energy report, coming to you on this Labor Day weekend from the United States. How are you? How have you been navigating these very intense energies of shifts and changes and upheaval and chaos and mm, is that chaos surrounding you or is it inside of you? That's the question. And that is what the reading will explore this week. Sorry to cut to the chase, but I want to give you context immediately upon the dynamics that we are facing. In terms of astrology, what are we dealing with? Well, we have two grand trines, one in earth and one in air, that have been quite potent as they have built into their aspects, and the Venus aspects are sort of bringing up, Venus is in challenge to Pluto, and in all honesty, it's a bit of a crapshoot as to which one wins out when it comes to those two. So what does that mean for us? Well, it probably means that there's some insecurities surrounding self-worth, surrounding what we feel we deserve, um, and it's not so much that we're falling into that, it's more that we come to we always go through this process, right? We come to this point where we think that we have vanquished or overcome something in terms of our insecurities, and then a new situation arises that forces us to level up. So it's never revisiting the same thing, it's just sort of graduating to a different level. And usually it comes at us, especially with this Uranus Taurus energy that we're in, and what Uranus has been up to lately. It comes to us in a way that is um, not perhaps so much unanticipated, because I think we're all a little bit on edge because we have an awareness of these dynamics, but more the thing with Uranus is, right, that you can't outsmart Uranus. Uranus always comes at you with, from, I want to say the back door, but it's just sort of like maybe it's not even the back door, maybe it comes from above or below or some area or direction that you are not paying attention to. Obviously, we can't be in constant awareness of everything. So that's the way it works. And, we could look at that from a fatalistic perspective as being tripped up, but we're not being tripped up. We are being, it's precisely because that's a part of our consciousness that is not fully developed that then we have a little portal into an opportunity to develop our frequency into something higher and more evolved, right? So when we stick to that perspective on everything, it tends to be a lot more elevating and a lot more enriching and a lot more enjoyable. But I understand, because at the very base of our reading, we do have a particular card that represents exhaustion and burnout, that these have been some very, very intense times. And it's been, Black Moon Lilith, which I think is now at 5. I'm not going to go into the exact dynamics because I'm not entirely sure and I don't have notes in front of me, but I think the graduation point of Black Moon Lilith in the last 2 weeks was that we moved from um, much more insular fears to now being more in the position where we're afraid of the dynamics around us. So those insecurities of the Venus-Pluto dynamic and the Black Moon Lilith dynamic with the nodes of the creates a focus on overcoming fear. And I think we're pretty seasoned when it comes to overcoming fear, so I don't think that any of us will find ourselves, you know, in direct challenge, but we may have to do a lot more self-care in order to ground ourselves through the process so that we don't fall into creating negative vibrational energy that then in turn reflects back to us in our environment. We have to rise above right now, no matter what the challenges are. The goal is to let go of fear. So any fear that arises, whether that be fear of loss, it could be fear of loss of health, fear of loss of a job, fear of loss of security, fear of loss of a relationship, fear of loss of family, fear of loss of what ends up underneath it all being a conditional version of something that has to develop into an unconditional version of something. If that explains that a little bit better. Of course, it's all deeply metaphysical and spiritually dense, but that's the process. It's an upward spiral for us, and we are in that. And as we've said before, sometimes you find yourself at a part of that spiral that doesn't really feel stable, or where there's more that's concealed than what has been revealed, which can cause us to feel fear. So again, this is all fluid. There's really not necessarily an exact timeline for any of this, nor is there an exact way that it will manifest, because it's going to depend on your attitude, your perspective, your generosity of spirit, your receptivity, your ability to move beyond resistance and stagnation, and essentially to your ability to move into flow. So anyway, all of this will be explained to us in our cards. The good news is that the other trine we're dealing with the Mars energy, is really a great boost to our energy and to our ability to embrace the divine feminine in balance with the masculine. And that is always what creates harmony in our flow, in our dynamics with the world around us and within. So this push is a little bit of a, I wouldn't say a tug of war, but it's a tempering process, as it always is. And sometimes we have these intense pockets where the tempering process kind of, rather than being like a slow back and forth like this, that slowly like gets closer to the center. This may be a week where it's like a little bit like that, and I just love hand movements, clearly. But I hope that explains it to you. The cadence is intensified in order for us to graduate quicker, because we've got really great things on the horizon. That's what you have to remember, that in these times where we're challenged, it's not about, I mean, yes, you can be, if you go into the depletion energy, you're going to feel like there's an accumulation of challenges that you don't feel up to task to be able to manage and overcome. But the fact of the matter is, if you hold onto the vision of the light at the end of the tunnel and you realize that that's actually much closer than you can possibly imagine, let's face it, in the grand scheme of things, from a linear perspective, when we do measure things in time and space, as a 3D forces us to most of the time, what is 2 months, 3 months? We've got a new moon on Monday. That makes me laugh, to any of you who are old enough to remember the Duran Duran song, because that's what goes through my head every time I hear that at the moment. the new moon is a really intense, beautiful new moon. I mean, it is bringing with it an intensification, an amplification of all of this positive momentum. But of course, it's the beginning of the 28-day cycle. We will move towards the full moon. When we arrive at the full moon will allow us to release what isn't serving us and to embrace the fullness of the experience that the new moon is bringing to us. And then basically we're in a flow where there may be a sense of some kind of resolution at that time, but it won't be in its fullness. It will then take approximately 6 weeks to fully manifest, because it really isn't until the beginning of November that we start to see a full resolution of whatever this new chapter is. As you remember, we had the Fool, we had, you know, we were forewarned, should I say, by the cards that we were at the very beginning of a new journey. And now we're on that journey, and you'll see we have two aces in this week's reading, which is exactly where we want to be at those initial stages of thrust forward, being thrust forward, sorry, if I could speak grammatically correctly. Anyway, it's all in divine order. Mercury, as we said, in Libra, this is a beautiful aspect for us from the perspective of our communication skills being at their peak in terms of being able to maintain harmony and balance and be able to measure both sides of any equation. And that's where we want to be in these intense times. And to be perfectly frank, because I know last week and the week before were total chaotic. I'll just use the word. I'm sorry. I really do wish that I should make an effort not to swear so much, but they were mind fucks, in many ways, because we weren't prepared for how, well, how would I put this? I feel like what it was we were all being challenged, and none of us was really in the place to have the energetic reserves to handle those things. So it really did feel like an uphill climb. And believe it or not, you've actually gotten to where you needed to get to. And now things will flow, and now things will fall into place. But like everything, we carry the memory of the experience up until the point that we're at now, and that informs the vibrational energy of what it is. So we have to take the time to recalibrate, so that if there was negativity in those feelings, for me, for example, there were issues of trust, there were issues of, valid issues of trust. This is not coming from my personal paranoia. This is not a Black Moon Lilith thing. This was a tangible Mars energy that was, creating a divisiveness in my environment that put me in the position to have to not only be in total self-preservation mode, but also to still extend myself sufficiently to enable a shifting dynamic that was beyond my comfort zone. I can't really go into more details than that, and nor would that be particularly interesting to you, but maybe in that way of summarizing things, you may find some parallel truth for yourself. But that's really where that leveling up came about. And gosh, did I feel like I'd been in a tumble dryer for days on end. That's really how I felt. And I'm still not entirely sure how the outside circumstances will develop and evolve. But one thing I do know is is that I reminded myself of my own sovereignty, and at the end of the day, no matter what happens, if I am truthful to myself, if I am in my authenticity, I made a couple of I had a couple of moments of self-doubt because I felt the need to, I felt that I was betraying other people because I was being asked to maintain a certain secrecy around things. And that's always something that is problematic for me, probably because of things in my own upbringing that caused me to um, play into a duality of roles to um, suit certain people's needs. And that's always, that's like, those are, that discomfort when you don't actually have an outlet for that and you don't know how to explain it, and especially if it's the authority figures themselves that are asking you to do that, which is the case in my life now and was the case in my life when I was growing up. um, that split within can be a very dark, lonely place to be. But we level up as we evolve and mature. And at this point in my life, and I'm sure this applies to you too, in this energy, you come into, rather than feeling a separation in that type of navigation, you feel a wholeness within and with the greater collective, with the universe, in other words. And so there is no room for dark corners and going into darker energy, because we accept that what we do is good enough, and that all we can do is aspire to doing our best. Anyway, that is a very roundabout way of talking about certain things that hopefully you're understanding and experiencing in your own life. What should we start with? Okay, you know what? I feel in this particular reading that I'm going to start with the outline from the Sacred Destiny Oracle card, because there were basically 4 cards that came out, and they were, when I was shuffling, I saw them, and just the words were showing where the cards ended up, and they sort of tell a story, and I think they give us a good arc of the energy that we're in. And I will read just the first card, Voyage, so that we get a sense of what that means. Of course, voyage is not necessarily like physically going anywhere, but you understand that from a spiritual perspective. So we have voyage, wonders, focus, and flexibility. So what does that arc really tell? Well, let's read voyage and then develop on that. The card shows the humpback whale, and humpback whales make the longest journey of any mammal. They travel 14,000 miles, that's 22,000 kilometers, every year. They spend the summer months near polar regions, and in the winter they journey towards the equator to tropical waters. Among some native tribes, whales are considered to be protectors of travelers and journeyers, as well as guardians of the sea. This card indicates that no matter what your journey is and where it takes you, you have protection at your side. Get ready, you are about to embark on a journey. It might be an inner sojourn or an outer voyage to a distant land. It might be a project or idea that is coming to life, but most certainly you are an intrepid traveler, sallying forth into the unknown. Where do you want to go? What have you always wanted to do or be? This is the time to make it happen. Get prepared. Have a clear vision of what you want to experience, but also be prepared for the unexpected. That is part of the exhilaration of being a traveler. Remember to enjoy the journey as much as reaching the destination. Sound words of advice and pretty broad. And I would say, just to go beyond that is to acknowledge that, as the words just spoke, that we have to enjoy the journey as much as the destination. That's what Wonders is all about, right? It's about acknowledging how much beauty, opportunity, solace, and dynamism there exists in every single um, scenario, moment, convergence along the way. If you think back in your life, and I mean, I guess we all are sentient in different ways, but I'm not a very nostalgic person any longer in my life. I did used to be very nostalgic, I think because I am a very sensitive person. So for me, I always had a hyper awareness of um, an amalgam of aspects of circumstances and experiences. So if I remembered um, going to Hawaii when I was what was I, like 7 year old. Um, I remember like the sentiment of the journey to the airport mixed with um, the smell of the hotel room, the TV set, the bedding, the light, um, the sounds, all of these things they register. And it's like, again, I used to hold on to all of these circumstantial aspects. I think, if I had had the discipline to be a writer, I mean, I do have the discipline. Well, I mean, I have the skill set to be an excellent writer, but it just so happens that when I was younger, what I'm trying to say is I used to actually think that retelling your story was of interest, and now I've found other ways of dealing with that teachable energy. Just because the world has changed enormously, right? Anyway, I say that because that is what the Wonders is all about. And sorry for that being so long-winded, but that's essentially what I'm sort of saying. It's like that's the way to experience life, and not in the nostalgic sense, in the present moment. That to have that awareness when there's silence, you still might hear the buzzing of your refrigerator, or you still might hear the rustling of the leaves, or whatever that is, and that informs something in the dynamics that changes your heart energy, right? Um, Helicopters not so much. If you can hear that, sometimes these AirPods are actually pretty good at cutting out the background noise. I really apologize as well for last week's audio. I have no idea if this week's going to be any better. I'll check it out, and I can always adjust it, I guess, in iMovie if it really is too quiet, because last week it was so quiet and I wasn't doing anything differently. The only thing I can think of is that maybe my AirPods switched off and it was recording directly to my iPad. I don't know. Who knows? Anyway, thank you, Spirit Message, like reminding me that while this is a part of the journey, it's also telling me to do the same focus. So, again, with all of that wonderment, with that awareness of every aspect of your experience that can elevate the experience to something of notable joy and intensification, um, focus is a very focus tells us to 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 hone in on those aspects of our experience so that we have a fullness to that, because it's the sum total of the parts, right? But if it's just very often I think we fall into this experience nowadays with the way that the world is and with the lack of attention to, the lack of um, an attention span, really. I mean, everything in our world has reduced us to really thinking that we can multitask or that we can focus on going from one experience to another in like a click of the fingers, when in fact there's a very different vibrational energy to those two experiences. So you're missing out because the transition never takes place. And I think that's really what this is. It's like you have to know everything that makes up the total in your experience in order for it to really give you the full benefit of what is there for you. That, I mean, this is very metaphysical, so I hope you're following, because I don't necessarily always have the language to express that. So I hope I'm clarifying that. I do not mean that you're not capable of understanding it. It's more the onus is on me for how I express it to you. And then flexibility. Again, it's almost like spirit just speaks to us. Well, it's not almost. Spirit does speak to us live. And basically, that's where the flexibility comes in, is understanding that, again, there's also no draconian way of approaching this. I'm expressing it to you through my neurotransmitter programming and flow. You are a different type of person. You may be more, you know, left brained or right brained, or just like you may be a more rational thinker or a more creative thinker. So it's that's going to obviously depend on your experiences, your personality, your um, persona, all of those things. So, which of course we want to strip away the persona so that we actually have an authentic experience. Again, complex, but you understand because we talk about this stuff every week, right? So that gives us an overview of what the focus is from a metaphysical perspective on how to approach this energy ahead. I will go with our Spirit Animal Oracle card of the week, which is number 27, Fox Spirit. Think on your feet. Be alert now, for Fox Spirit has appeared, and you are meant to move swiftly. Let this clever spirit draw out your creativity as you adjust to rapidly changing circumstances with resilience, grace, and astuteness. Fox Spirit helps you to think on your feet, using your best judgment and wits to help you slip into a more advantageous situation. Now is not a time to hesitate, but a time for swift action of the mind, a time to think outside the box and notice the many ways in which you might make a move, aware of your surroundings and always clear on what you deserve and wish to co-create. Trust that your cleverness, guided by Fox Spirit, will serve you well. And the protection message I'm going to read specifically for one reason, and that's that not only did I originally pull a card from the Spirit Animal Oracle deck, which I can't even remember what the card was, but it was about love, and I had a moment of doubt where I was like, wait, did that really come out, or just, so I threw it back in, and Fox Spirit kept coming up. So the protection message seems to actually speak directly to my own actions, so hopefully on behalf of the collective. Are you camouflaging yourself to avoid intimacy? Perhaps you're being too clever for your own good and playing games to protect yourself. Being dishonest with yourself or others can become isolating and create obstacles to true connection. Thought Spirit calls you to be attuned to what is happening within you and around you so that your quick thinking and creativity can lead you to better relationships and situations. You are called to use your Fox Spirit beneficially rather than in ways that keep you from experiencing what you want. Or perhaps right now you are realizing that a situation is trickier than it appears on the surface and you are afraid to make a move in case it turns out to be a mistake. Fox Spirit is here to remind you that when you are in alignment with the Great Spirit, The answer and solutions can come quickly, and you can trust them. Don't overthink a situation in order to avoid the challenge of facing a difficult truth. Fox Spirit's creative nature will always be there to guide you and help you to move quickly into better circumstances. So there is an element of trust, a big element of trust in there. Trust yourself, and then when you don't feel like you can trust yourself, trust Spirit and the universe. And emphasizing that love dynamic, again, love is not necessarily romantic, but it could be. There are some romantic aspects in the planets right now for those of us who are perhaps in search of more love in our lives, other than the love that we can give ourselves. Drunk with love. Let love lift you to freedom. Where is the suit? Oh, here it is. Here it is. I'll hold it up for you. Borrow the beloved's eyes. Look through them and see the face of the beloved everywhere. You will feel no weariness, no indifference, for what was so unappealing before will begin to appear in a new light. Rumi. When life is mundane and waking up in the morning is void of excitement, it means that we are pulling away from our dreams. This is when we need to improve our personal lives and make positive changes in our relationships. Being drunk with love removes the barriers that have held us apart from others, from the divine, and from the world. Now is the time to focus on love and on giving from the heart, perhaps to rebuild an old love connection or initiate a fresh start. Rumi's message to you is to let go of your self-centered thoughts and begin to see everything through the eyes of love. When you perceive with loving gaze, when you perceive with loving gaze, you become surrounded by energy like a fragrance in the air, which shelters you with a pure love such as you have never known before. You will be escorted by a warm, blushing glow that calls you into a community of friends who welcome you into their hearts. So whatever's on the horizon for you in terms of people, especially like new energetic injection into certain relationship dynamics or environments, pay attention to those because they are there for a reason. These are the people that will accompany you on this next chapter of your journey, and it's time to invest in them with love. And I do actually understand how that needs to be or how it can be administered. I'll give you an example. You know, I can find myself in the position with some of my friends where I'm listening to them, and because, you know, I do have my guard up when it comes to hearing people tell me about stories about other people and their relationships and oh, this didn't work out for them and blah blah blah, and I can immediately pinpoint exactly why it didn't. Their intentions were not in the right place. They were looking for security to be given to them by somebody else, blah blah blah. And so I dismiss it. And in dismissing that person, I allow myself to do that because I'm thinking to myself, well, it's not the person I'm talking to. They're talking about a friend of theirs. But for them, on the inside, they're going to experience that in the pain body as an attack on them because that friendship is a reflection of them, and that's something that they tolerate and see the ability to navigate with authority and kindness and love. And so it's not my place to it. I'm not coming at them with love. I might think that I'm coming at them with love, and I'm only not coming at somebody else without love. That I put a double negative in there. I'm sorry. You understood what I meant. That it's the same. It's the same thing, and it's hard for me to remember that. I'm sure you've been in that position too. But we do have to be mindful and accountable in that way. And the reason that came to me in thinking was because I was like, well, I get irritated when a person comes back at me with a defensiveness when I speak to them in that way, and then I realize that I brought that on myself. I'm the one that had the shortcoming of feeling self-righteous and judgmental, entitled to being judgmental of someone else. And that's, it's my role to elevate that. Even if the other person, even if in my mind I think to myself, well, it's okay because that friend bitches about that person or blah, 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 blah. Well, yeah, that may be true, but we all have to understand that we hold the potential for change for the better. We don't do something badly just because somebody else did it badly too. We lead by example. It's important to remember that. Because otherwise it accumulates and eventually there's resentment or bitterness or frustration or just a general sense of um, chaos, emotional chaos, right? So there is the truth within that. Okay, at the very, how am I going to do this? I do some weird things sometimes with these readings. Okay, yes. Okay, so I will read you we got two Asha Zen cards to sort of outline the energies of the week ahead, what we're leaving behind and what we're moving into. The outsider is what we're leaving behind, and trust is what we're moving into. So as mundane as it can sometimes be when I read these cards, I think it's important, especially when they're the outline of the energy of the week. So let's read the outsider, even though we've read it many times before. That is the Five of Pentacles. I'm looking at the wrong book. That's why I'm like, jeez Louise. Sorry. Um, The small child in this card is standing on one side of a gate looking through it. He is so small and so convinced that he cannot get through, he cannot see that the chain holding the gate is not locked. All he has to do is open it. Whenever we feel left out or excluded, it brings up this feeling of being a small, helpless child. It's not surprising, as the feeling is deeply rooted in our earliest childhood experiences. The problem is that because it's so deeply rooted, it plays over and over again like a tape in our lives. You have an opportunity now to stop the tape, to quit tormenting yourself with ideas that you are somehow not enough to be accepted and included. Recognize the roots of these feelings in the past and let go of the old pain. It will bring you the clarity you see. No, it will bring you the clarity to see how you can open the gate and enter that which you most long to become. So you're feeling yourself an outsider. This is good. This is the transitory period. Now you have to be alert, not to fill yourself with pain and misery. Now that God is no longer there, who is going to console you? You don't need any consolation. Humanity has come of age. Be a man, be a woman, and stand on your own feet. The only way to be connected with existence is to go inwards, because there at the center you are still connected. You have been disconnected physically from your mother. That disconnection was absolutely necessary to make you an individual in your own right. But you are not disconnected from the universe. Your connection with the universe is of consciousness. You cannot see it, so you have to go deep down with great awareness, watchfulness, witnessing, and you will find the connection. The Buddha is the connection. How apt that then we would move into trust, right? As our energetic rising. Um, where is it? There, 60. It's the Knight of Cups. I always love this card just because I love the colors, but that's Now is the moment to be a bungee jumper without the cord, and it is this quality of absolute trust with no reservations or secret safety nets that the night of water demands from us. There is a tremendous sense of exhilaration if we can take the jump and move into the unknown, even if the idea scares us to death. And when we take trust to the level of the quantum leap, we don't make any elaborate plans or preparations. We don't say, okay, I trust that I know what to do now, and I'll settle my things and pack my suitcase and take it with me. No, we just jump with hardly a thought for what happens next. The leap is the thing, and the thrill of it is as we free fall through the empty sky. The card gives us a hint here, though, about what waits for us at the other side. A soft, welcoming, yummy pink rose petals. Juicy, come on. Don't waste your life for that which is going to be taken away. Trust life. If you trust, only then can you drop your knowledge. Only then can you put your mind aside. And with trust, something immediately immense opens up. Then this life is no longer an ordinary life, it becomes full of God overflowing. When the heart is innocent and the walls have disappeared, you are bridged with infinity, and you are not deceived. There is nothing that can be taken away from you. That which can be taken away from you is not worth keeping, and that which cannot be taken away from you, why should one be afraid of it being taken away? It cannot be taken away. There is no possibility. You cannot lose your real treasure. Beautiful. And I'm glad that I read those first because our underlying energy that we are, again, this is the outsider energy. This is why we would find ourselves in that outsider energy. We have the Nine of Wands, which is, of course, the card of weariness, exhaustion, as the card is called in this deck. So let us read so that we can get some hints as to how we move beyond exhaustion. Because we have no choice, right? Because we've got a lot ahead of us and we need a lot of energy to navigate that. I mean, that image within itself really does exhaust everyone. And I think it's very interesting that there's almost like lots of mechanical things in there that make us understand, it's kind of a reflection of the world we live in with social media and AI and, just everything, the idea that the world is more convenient in so many ways. If you really think about it, we can barely keep up, and we're trying because it's our human nature to try to control. And the more we entrust ourselves to the digital, the more we find ourselves at loggerheads with something fundamentally awry, which is that you can't trust AI. I'm sorry. Okay. This is the portrait of one whose whole life energy has been depleted in his efforts to keep fueling the enormous and ridiculous machine of self-importance and productivity. He has been so busy keeping it all together and making sure everything runs smoothly that he has forgotten to really rest. No doubt he can't allow himself to be playful. To abandon his duty for a trip to the beach could mean the whole structure might come tumbling down. The message of this card is not just about being a workaholic, though. It's about all the ways in which we set up safe but unnatural routines for ourselves, and by doing so, keep the chaotic and spontaneous away from our doors. Life isn't a business to be managed, it's a mystery to be lived. It's time to tear up the time card, break out of the factory, and take a little trip into uncharted waters. Your work can flow more smoothly from a relaxed state of mind. A man who lives through conscience becomes hard. A man who lives through consciousness remains soft. Why? Because a man who has some idea about how to live naturally becomes hard. He is continuously to carry his character around with him. That character is like an armor. His protection, his security, his whole life is invested in that character. And he always reacts to situations through the character, not directly. If you ask him a question, his answer is ready made. That is a sign of a hard person. He is dull, stupid, mechanical. He may be a good computer, but he is not a man. You do something and he reacts in a well established way. His reaction is predictable. He's a robot. The real man acts spontaneously. If you ask him a question, your question gets a response, not a reaction. He opens his heart to your question, exposes himself to your question, and responds to it. I think it's really interesting. I'm going to tell you a little exercise to do. I mean, I'm sure you've already done these things before, but it always helps to revisit these things. And that, when you do those, what do they call enneagrams or whatever they're called, like personality um, uh, tests, to find out what you are, your personality type. And I just did one the other day, and I was, I'm like, apparently I'm a champion, the champion. That was never what those personality tests would tell me in the past, because the reality is, when I was taking those, when I was answering all the questions, like there's 60 odd something questions, sometimes more, um, I had to really think to myself, was I being honest with my answer? Like I'd answer something and then I'd be like, wait, that's not really true. That's just the story that I've told myself. And can I allow myself to transcend that and actually see authentically how I feel about something? And that's how you can see how much you've changed and actually maybe get to know yourself for real for the first time, because a lot of the time we don't actually know ourselves. We just tell ourselves stories, right? To please others, to fit in, or because they're conditional based on an experience that we had, you know. Um, I'm particularly that way in my romantic outlook because, I didn't have the ability I didn't know how to love. So I approach relationship only from the point of view of what I could get out of it, my needs, not in a calculated materialistic way, in an emotionally vampirical way. And so those relationships were always disasters because I was very self righteous in them. And I would basically look at myself as being like, but I deserve this love because I am a loving person. And it's like, no, you don't even know how to love. I mean, it took me decades to come to that understanding, but, I come from a broken home. How on earth would I have learned to love? You know, what I was told love was just like a bunch of hypocrisy. So, and of course, then we have cultural reinforcement of some very bizarre ideas around what love is. So, all of that together means that I've never actually had the opportunity to authentically experience a romantic relationship. Sad but true. I mean, it's not sad because I'm the sum total of my parts, and this is where I'm at in my life, and it's all divinely planned, and that just wasn't part of my journey, like to have those things until I did all of the work on myself, and I'm still doing that. So, maybe at some point something will come along in my life that challenges me to actually, gives me a platform to actually walk the walk as well as talk the talk. That's usually the way it works, but I figure it hasn't come about, so there's probably a reason for that. I probably still have a lot of work to do because it would be useless for me to have another self-destructive experience. And I speak purely from my perspective. I'm sure that as much as I experience great pain and loss and betrayal or whatever in those relationships that I did have when I wasn't able to love, I'm sure I did horrible damage to those people too. Probably why there's only one of my exes that I've ever actually had any kind of reconciliatory flow with afterwards. So, oops. but that's how we learn, right? Oh, where am I? Okay, so just four tarot cards for us this week, and two of them basically mirror the other two. So we have, as I said in the beginning, two aces: Ace of Pentacles, the Ace of Swords, and then we have the Knight of Swords and the Page of Pentacles in that order. So on the Fool journey, we reach the Ace when the potentiality and the opportunity and the experience opens up, and it's the first steps on that journey. So um, certainly in my life I can see what that is. There's an evolving process of how I see myself in work and in life in general, and there are big shifts taking place that are not entirely transparent right now. I don't know where they're leading to, but I know that they're happening. And so um, there is for sure an Ace of Pentacles in my life, an opportunity for change that will benefit me, but it really comes down to how I embrace it. And obviously, the potentiality of an ace is huge. Um, so with Pentacles, that is obviously an opportunity in our material realm. There is like, a new career opportunity, a new home opportunity, a new, um, it can be a community. It can be, um, I always think it's funny because we talk about a social life as being, we imagine that to be going to restaurants and bars and clubs or dates or dinners and home with friends or whatever it may be, concerts, that kind of thing. But our social life includes work. For many of us, work is a very large part of our life. So, the social dynamics of work are, they they play a fundamental role um, in our psychology. It's, I think a lot of people have this horrible tendency to kind of see work as being separate from who they are, but it's an integral part of who you are, and how you interact with your colleagues, or how you're treated by a boss, or how empowered or disempowered you feel, that's fundamentally going to have a huge influence on your psychology, um, and your well-being and your development. Um, so think about that if you do segregate uh, work from your sense of self, because that's not really a healthy way of looking at life. I know that so many people talk about work-life balance, and of course, that is essential. It's an aspirational tool for us as individuals within the body of a corporation or small business, or um, sole proprietorship, whatever it is. We define ourselves within that. So anyway, something to contemplate, perhaps, if you're struggling with that at all, or if you haven't given it any thought before. But so very positive that we have that ace there, and then we have the Ace of Swords, and the Ace of Swords is a mental process. So this shows us that in this new Ace of Pentacles material opportunity, our mind has the potential to experience this new chapter, this new experience completely differently, in a completely new way from anything that we have experienced before. Again, aces are about potentiality. How we experience those things is entirely on us, Um, and just to clarify that, because like while I was these came out while I was I wasn't specifically looking for clarifiers, but they did come out. So what do we have here? We have the Two of Swords, which is, when we're in that place of having to make a decision where our insecurities can potentially put us in a feeling of confusion and chaos because we don't have control of the outcome, when in fact we hold the world in our hands. We have completed a cycle in our lives. That means that no matter what happens, that foundation will not be taken away from us any longer. We are not going to go back into the insecurity of poverty consciousness in this new Ace of Pentacles experience. We have the divine fusion of the divine masculine and feminine within in the chariot, which is what gets those wheels moving forward to conquer the next leveling up opportunity. Just for clarity. So again, it is a reminder. We have trust. We have, moving out of that outsider. We have the reminder that we need to be in that place of love in everything that we do. We have the reminder from Fox Spirit that we have to think on our feet, that we have to be, again, in an all-knowingness that comes directly from the universe. We're in support of us. And again, reflected, that Ace of Pentacles, Ace of Swords is the voyage. Understand that? The wonders. Pay attention to the details. Take it all in. Focus. Stay focused on your goals, but also stay focused on what makes up the sum total of the parts. And flexibility being key. Don't go by what you experienced before. This is new. And, the Knight of Swords is a very swift moving energy. It's like basically what it's saying is in this coming week, what happens is we transform from those ace energies into an emboldened perspective on how to move forward. It's the Slayer. I hate things, I don't mean that in a warlike way. Although I suppose there is a warrior element to it, but it's the warrior. You're a warrior on your own journey, not in a war. You're fighting for yourself to evolve. And that's what this opportunity is. There's a huge leveling up on offer to us. And the Page of Pentacles, at the same time, is that tempering energy that kind of says to us, yeah, but don't get ahead of yourself, in the sense that, yeah, mentally, you have that swiftness to navigate things with the understanding and harmony and fusion required in order to stay in your authentic self and respect your boundaries and also continue growing. But the Page of Pentacles reminds us that we are at the beginning of a process. So you can't expect to reap the fruits of your labor before you've done the work, right? It's a process. So you don't expect a baby to be fully developed at 1 month into a pregnancy, right? No, you have to go through the entire process. So I'm just going to ask if there's any clarifiers that they want for us on any of those cards, Spirit, anything. Otherwise, I'm just going to move right into our final card. Any cards to clarify those? I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward, so they probably won't give us any. I'm not feeling any energy coming from those. So, our outcome. What a beautiful card to end on. The Ten of Cups, harmony. All of this, think about that on your journey. Think, for all of us, it's the same thing. What has lacked in our lives? Harmony. And why? Because we were in poverty consciousness, or we didn't believe in our potentiality, or we empowered other people who were not good for us to dictate to us where our limits were. And the limits only exist in our mind, right? So there's a huge freeing up of a flow of energy beyond that right now. I feel like excited by that. I mean, I feel almost like a massive, like, I felt this like rejuvenation energy like come through me into my um solar plexus, where usually I store anxiety. It goes back to that feeling. I always think of that as like, the anxiety of judgment, like failing exams, or, whatever that may be that you like had a fear of. And it's that kind of feeling. It almost feels like that's just gone. That's not there. That's just a remnant of something that's, really not who we are at all any longer. So listen carefully to the harmony message, because this summarizes where we are headed and all the information we need to navigate this energy in the week ahead. The experience of resting in the heart in meditation is not something that can be grasped or forced. It comes naturally as we grow more and more in tune with the rhythms of our own inner silences. The figure on this card reflects the sweetness and delicacy of this experience. The dolphins that emerge from the heart and make an arc towards the third eye reflect the playfulness and intelligence that comes when we are able to connect with the heart and move into the world from there. Let yourself be softer and more receptive, because an expressible joy is waiting for you just around the corner. Nobody else can point it out to you, and when you find it, you won't be able to find the words to express it to others, but it's there, deep within your heart, ripe and ready to be discovered. Listen to your heart. Move according to your heart, whatsoever the stake, a condition of complete simplicity costing not less than everything. To be simple is arduous, because to be simple costs everything that you have. You have to lose all to be simple. That's why people have chosen to be complex, and they have forgotten how to be simple. But only a simple heart throbs with God, hand in hand. Only a simple heart sings with God in deep harmony. To reach to that point, you will have to find your heart, your own throb, your own beat. Perfect. A perfect message to summarize all of this. And there seems to be a very strong emphasis on the balance between the heart energy and the material realm. So think about that. Think about where you sell yourself short, where you cut yourself off from that flow of the heart into the mundane, into the worldly, into the material, into the physical, into your work, into your relationships, into the way that you treat your body, your mind, and your soul. Because they are all interconnected, right? And we do tend to fragment and compartmentalize. And we've long moved out of that being a foundational uh, philosophy. But sometimes the learned responses have us always 4 steps ahead of where we need to be. And that is what that Page of Pentacles is there to remind us of, is, enjoy the ace energy, the opportunity, potentiality. Why would we want to be at the end of the journey? Right? It's beautiful, the experience of life. On that note, thank you for spending this hour with me. I'm really interested to hear, if you care to share in the comments, how this is playing out for you. I know I put these calls out, and very rarely does anybody do so, and I understand too, because this is, sometimes it's very deeply personal, and we don't really wish to share. But it's, I think it can be very therapeutic to verbalize that in some shape or form. So if you do choose to do that, please, I always enjoy getting comments from people. Um, and to my new subscribers watching this, um, welcome and thank you. I'm really glad that you enjoy what we do together here energetically. I know I have a kind of unique approach to this, and a lot of people prefer mundane um, interpretations of cards, but that's just not how I roll or we roll. We know that there's bigger picture stuff that needs to be explored, and in the grand scheme of things, that's what really makes our experience from a week to week basis. So um, I thank you for putting your trust in this process, and I wish you infinite blessings and love in everything that you experience in the week to come. And I look forward to our next meeting. Namaste.